The night had the color of forgotten stone. Even the stars seemed muted, as though the sky itself held its breath while I approached the old path that wound toward the mountain. My lantern swayed from a thin iron hook, its golden light trembling over uneven cobblestones slick with dew. The air carried a strange, hollow rhythm, as if the mountain itself was whispering a word too soft to understand. They said this path was once used by priests who walked barefoot, each step an offering of silence to the gods who no longer answered. Now it was only I alone, climbing toward the ruins they called the temple that hears you back. I didn't know why I was drawn to it. Perhaps the same way a dream calls you even when you forget its beginning. The wind changed as I reached the first stair, ancient marble steps carved from the mountain's bones. Mist rolled down from above like spilled milk, cool against my face. My lantern flickered, and for a brief second, the flame stretched higher, as if something unseen had exhaled gently upon it. I stopped. The night was utterly still. No birds, no insects, just my own heartbeat and the faint crackle of fire inside glass. Each step groaned beneath my boots. The sound echoed strangely, rebounding not outward into the open air but back toward me, quieter, slower, as though the mountain repeated my every move a heartbeat later. I tested it. One tap of my foot, then another. The echo returned not once but twice, as though someone invisible climbed behind me. The torchlight from the valley had long vanished. All that remained was the deep blue glow of distant stars. The mist thickened as I climbed, curling between pillars that rose like ghosts of forgotten giants. And then at the top of the staircase, the great bronze doors came into view, half open, one hanging slightly ajar, their surfaces tarnished by centuries of rain and prayer. I hesitated. The moment I stepped closer, a strange sound whispered through the gap, soft, melodic, almost human. Not words, but something like a sigh carried across the ocean. My fingers brushed the edge of the door. It was colder than ice. The metal hummed faintly under my touch. When I pushed, the door opened without a sound. The temple's interior breathed out a cloud of mist that kissed my face, warm and damp like the breath of something sleeping. I raised my lantern higher. Marble pillars reached into the dark above, their tops lost in shadows. Between them, faint points of light floated like drifting embers. My steps made no sound now. Even the echo had vanished. It was as though the air swallowed everything that entered. At the center of the hall stood a simple stone altar, bathed in soft amber light. Candles surrounded it, though none were lit. The glow came from within the stone itself, a deep pulsing warmth like the heartbeat of the world. I approached slowly. Each movement sent a ripple through the quiet, and though there was no breeze, the mist stirred gently, swirling around my legs as though alive. I could smell salt. Not the sea, something older, more mineral, like ancient tears trapped in the stone. When I reached the altar, I saw faint carvings spiraling around its surface, words I couldn't read yet somehow understood. A story written in breath rather than ink. Without thinking, I whispered. Just a single word, "Hello," and the temple whispered back. The sound was my own voice, stretched, softened, layered with a tone that wasn't entirely human. It came not from ahead, but from all around. The pillars, the floor, even the mist seemed to carry the echo. It wasn't frightening. It was tender, like being answered by a dream. My chest tightened. I whispered again, slower this time. "Who are you?" The echo replied, overlapping, fading. "Who are you? You." Until the last word turned into something else, a breath shaped like music. Something inside the altar shimmered. A faint ripple of golden light passed through the cracks, flowing toward the floor in gentle waves. I stepped back, watching as the glow spread along invisible lines, illuminating carvings on the ground, circles within circles, symbols older than language. The temple wasn't silent anymore. It hummed softly, resonating with the pulse beneath my feet. I felt an urge to speak again, but this time the whisper rose from the temple first. It said something in a voice both near and impossibly distant. Every sound is remembered. The words were clear, though they came without lips, without breath. My lantern's flame steadied, glowing brighter, reflecting off the marble until the whole chamber shimmered with soft light. And then, just as the words faded, I noticed faint shapes moving at the edges of the mist. Not bodies, memories, gentle silhouettes of robed figures kneeling in prayer, their forms flickering like candlelight, lips moving soundlessly. Their presence didn't feel ghostly. It felt familiar, like walking into a memory that belonged to everyone. I stood there for a long time, listening to nothing and everything at once. The temple heard me, and in return let me hear what silence sounded like. The altar pulsed again, slower now, and I realized with a strange calm that it matched the rhythm of my own heartbeat, as if the place itself was breathing in time with me. When I finally turned to leave, I noticed something I hadn't before. Along the wall, hidden behind a curtain of mist, a narrow corridor stretched deeper into the mountain. Faint golden light flickered far within, pulsing like a beacon calling from a dream. My voice trembled as I whispered, "Do you want me to follow?" And the echo in soft, loving, endless one whispered back, "Yes." The corridor waited like a breath held too long. Its entrance was narrow, framed by 2 marble columns etched with ancient vines, their carvings worn smooth by centuries of prayer and time. The mist here was thicker, not just air, but something alive, shimmering faintly with its own pulse. My lantern's glow struggled against it, spilling soft gold that vanished only a few feet ahead. When I stepped forward, the sound of my movement changed again, not a solid echo now, but something fluid, like walking through a dream that reshaped itself around each step. The floor beneath me was cool and damp, and somewhere deep within the stone I thought I heard the sound of a slow, steady inhale. The corridor was breathing. It wasn't wind. The movement was too rhythmic, too deliberate. With every soft exhale, the mist shifted outward, brushing against my skin like invisible fingers. With every inhale, it drew closer again, wrapping around my legs and waist like a quiet embrace. I should have been afraid, but the rhythm was strangely soothing, like being inside the lungs of something ancient and kind. As I walked deeper, faint glimmers appeared on the walls. Not light, memory. Scenes etched in luminous dust. Worshippers kneeling before the altar, offering bowls of oil, flowers, and words. Their lips moved silently, yet I could hear the faintest vibrations, like distant ocean waves or the sound of someone whispering underwater. I touched one of the carvings, and the surface shimmered briefly, rippling like water disturbed by a breeze. The whisper grew louder. It was my own voice again, but it said something I had not spoken. "You are not lost. You are remembered." The words bloomed inside my chest, warm and heavy, and for a moment I saw the corridor as it must have once been, alive with light and song. I could smell sandalwood and myrrh, hear the slow rhythm of drums and the murmur of voices praying in unison. Then, as quickly as it came, the vision faded, leaving only the hush of the mist. A faint golden thread of light ran along the ceiling, winding ahead like a guiding path. I followed it, careful not to disturb the silence too much. The deeper I went, the softer everything became, as though the air itself was growing tired of sound. Even my breathing began to match the slow pulse of the temple. I began to notice that the corridor wasn't straight. It curved gently like a spiral, always leading inward toward something unseen. The walls seemed to move when I wasn't looking directly at them, like they were subtly rearranging themselves to guide me forward. And somewhere beyond the curve I heard it again, the same echo that had answered me before. This time it wasn't words. It was a hum, low and melodic, like a voice without a mouth singing from inside the stone. My steps matched its rhythm unconsciously. The hum grew louder as I approached the bend. The mist parted just slightly, revealing a faint glow ahead, a circular chamber pulsing with dim gold light, like the heart of a sleeping god. Before I reached it, something brushed against my shoulder. I turned quickly, raising the lantern, but there was nothing behind me, only the mist. Yet it lingered there, shaped vaguely like a figure, taller than me, robed, with hands folded over its chest. I stared until the form dissolved back into vapor. My heart raced, but I kept walking. The humming stopped the moment I crossed the threshold into the chamber. It was smaller than I expected, a dome-shaped room carved entirely from a single piece of marble. The floor was smooth and reflective, covered in a thin layer of still water that mirrored the ceiling above. In the center, a pedestal rose from the water's surface, holding an object that looked like a bowl of stone filled with shimmering golden liquid. I stepped closer, my reflection rippling softly beneath me. The bowl emitted a faint warmth, and when I leaned over it, I could see that the liquid wasn't liquid at all. It was light. Gentle, shifting light that moved like molten honey. When I whispered, just a curious, hesitant sound, The surface trembled, and the light shifted. And then, like before, it answered, "Do you hear us?" The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was mine and not mine, male and female, one and many. The air vibrated softly. "I hear you," I whispered back. "Then you are part of the remembering," the voice said. "What does that mean?" I asked. The bowl of light shimmered brighter, and the reflection of my face changed. It wasn't my face anymore, it was someone else's. Dozens of faces, overlapping, shifting, each one whispering something inaudible. I reached out instinctively, and my fingertips passed through the glow. It was warm and weightless, like touching sunlight. A sensation flowed through me, a memory that wasn't mine. For an instant I stood in this same chamber, but thousands of years earlier. I wore robes of white linen. I was carrying a small offering, olive oil and flowers. Around me stood others chanting softly, and the bowl before us glowed just as it did now. We whispered our prayers into it, believing the temple would remember every word, and it did. The memory faded, leaving behind a strange peace. I realized the truth. This place wasn't haunted by spirits. It was alive with echoes. Every word spoken within its walls was stored like breath within lungs. Every whisper had a place here. Every prayer was still being heard. When I withdrew my hand, faint lines of light trailed down my arm, fading slowly into my skin. The temple had marked me, not in warning, but in recognition. I was now part of its song. I turned to leave, but before I stepped back into the corridor, the voice spoke once more, faint and gentle. "When you reach the inner hall, listen carefully. Not all echoes are yours." The corridor behind me shimmered faintly as though it had been waiting. The mist pulsed once, inhale, exhale, and then drew back to reveal a path leading further inward, where the golden thread disappeared into deeper shadow. I took one last look at the bowl of light, still glowing softly, and whispered a quiet promise. "I'll listen." And the temple, like a mother soothing her child, whispered back, "We know." The corridor curved like a serpent of marble, breathing quietly beneath the mountain's skin. My lantern's glow was small now, swallowed by the mist that thickened with each turn. Every few steps, the walls pulsed faintly with gold veins of light, as if the stone itself carried a heartbeat. The air smelled faintly of myrrh and rain-soaked earth. I don't know how long I walked. Time lost meaning down here. There was only rhythm, the soft drip of unseen water, the faint pulse beneath my feet, the endless whisper that sometimes came from nowhere, sometimes from inside me. Then, without warning, the corridor opened into a vast space, a domed chamber bathed in silver-blue glow. I stood at the edge of what looked like a still lake. Its surface reflected the ceiling's faint constellations perfectly, so that it seemed I was standing between two skies, one above, one below. In the center of the lake was an island of stone no larger than a single step, and upon it sat another bowl, wider and shallower than the last, filled not with light this time, but with water so clear I could see the bottom of the marble beneath. The air here felt different, thicker, slower. My breath fogged softly as if the temperature had dropped, yet the water remained calm and inviting, glowing faintly with the same gentle gold that filled the temple's veins. I crouched near the edge. My lantern's reflection danced on the surface like liquid fire. For a moment I could see only my face, tired, pale, eyes wide with awe. But then, as the water stilled, another reflection appeared behind mine. A woman, her features faint, soft, her eyes closed. She wore ancient robes of white and gold, her hair like dark silk floating in invisible water. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. My heart thudded in my chest. I leaned closer. "Who are you?" I whispered. The water rippled, and a voice, quiet as breath, replied, "I am everyone who has ever been heard." The words sent a slow shiver through me. They weren't frightening. They were beautiful, filled with infinite calm. The surface of the pool trembled again, and more faces appeared, hundreds, then thousands, overlapping, shimmering like reflections in a dream. Some smiled faintly. Others simply looked past me, their expressions serene and timeless. I realized then what this pool was. Not a mirror, but a memory. Every person who had ever stood here had been remembered. Every whisper, every prayer, every sigh. The temple had kept them all. I reached out, hesitating for just a moment before letting my fingertips touch the surface. The water was warm, impossibly warm, as though it carried the heat of long-forgotten summers. Instantly, my surroundings melted away. The temple dissolved into light, and I was somewhere else, standing on a wide marble terrace under a golden sky. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, and far below, waves crashed gently against the cliffs. I could smell salt and flowers and hear the sound of laughter carried on the wind. Behind me, the temple stood whole and new, its pillars white and shining, its doors alive with carvings that shimmered like living gold. People moved through the halls, their robes whispering softly, their voices blending into a hum of prayer, and at the altar the same bowl of light glowed like a captured sun. I felt the warmth of that time, the peace that came with knowing the world was alive and listening. But then, the light dimmed. Clouds gathered over the horizon. The sea turned dark. The laughter faded into a low rumble, not thunder but sorrow. I watched as people fled the terrace, leaving offerings behind. The temple's glow flickered. The voices grew faint, replaced by the sound of wind and sand. When the first stone cracked, the echo that followed was not of collapse but of grief. The temple heard their fear, their loss, their abandonment, and it remembered. It kept the sorrow deep within its marble bones. The vision faded. I was back by the pool, hand still resting on its surface, tears running down my cheeks without knowing why. The water shimmered softly, rippling outward, and in the faint vibration I heard the whisper again. Everything spoken is kept. Even silence becomes a song. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, listening to the stillness. The mist around me moved like sleeping breath. I dipped my hand once more into the water. Not to summon visions this time, but to leave something of myself behind. "I'm listening," I whispered, voice trembling. "If you remember everyone, remember me too." The water glowed faintly, and for the briefest moment my reflection smiled back at me. Not my face now, but the one I might have once had long ago, in another life, under another sky. Then the glow dimmed, and the water went still again. When I stood to leave, I noticed faint inscriptions along the edge of the pool. I traced one with my finger, and the letters lit softly, revealing a simple line written in ancient Greek. I didn't know the exact words, but I understood their meaning. To speak here is to become part of forever. As I turned back toward the corridor, the mist shifted ahead of me, forming the faint outline of an archway, and one I hadn't seen before. It was taller, wider, carved with symbols that pulsed gently with golden light. The temple was opening further. But as I approached, the echo of a voice, not my own, rose softly behind me. It was low, patient, and impossibly old. "You are not the first to listen. You will not be the last." I turned quickly, but the pool was empty now, perfectly still. Only my lantern's reflection trembled on its surface. A soft wind drifted through the chamber, the first movement of air I had felt in hours. It brushed against my cheek like a whisper of thanks. And so I walked onward, the glow of the archway leading me deeper into the living silence of the temple that remembers all things. The archway shimmered with a light that wasn't entirely gold, something older, softer, like candlelight filtered through memory. As I stepped closer, the air thickened, carrying the faint scent of burning myrrh and aged parchment. My lantern's glow dimmed, but the marble ahead pulsed gently as if to say, "You don't need it here." Beyond the archway lay a corridor wider than any before. Its walls curved outward and upward, forming a long vaulted hall that seemed to stretch into eternity. The mist here glowed faintly blue, and the silence wasn't silent anymore. It breathed. I could hear soft sighs, murmurs, the distant hum of many voices blending into one endless whisper. When I raised my hand to the wall, I realized it wasn't smooth stone. The surface was covered, completely, with thousands of carved names. Some glowed faintly. Others were nearly erased by time. The letters were ancient Greek, but they spoke beyond language. I didn't have to read them to feel what they were. People. Every person who had once stood within this temple. As I moved, slowly along the wall, the mist followed, curling around my feet like smoke. The names nearest to me brightened as I passed, faint gold light tracing each letter. I whispered one aloud, just to feel the sound of it leave my lips. Alessandra. The air stirred. The echo came back immediately, not the usual repeat of my voice, but a soft, feminine whisper behind me. "I am here." I froze. My breath caught. The name I had spoken glowed brighter now. Around it, faint particles of light drifted upward, forming a vague human outline that shimmered and then dissolved. A warmth spread through my chest, the strange calm of recognition. These weren't ghosts in the way we feared them. They were echoes that remembered themselves. I took another step, another name. Callian. The reply was slower this time, deeper, resonant, filled with weariness. Still listening. Each name had its own sound, its own emotion. When I whispered them, they whispered back. Not as trapped souls, but as preserved voices grateful to be remembered. The hall itself seemed to brighten with every interaction, like a living archive awakening after centuries of silence. But then something changed. The next few names I touched did not glow. Their carvings were cracked, worn away. When I whispered them, no echo came, only stillness. The absence of sound was heavier than sound itself. It felt wrong. I knelt, running my fingers over one of the faded names. The moment I touched it, a sudden chill spread up my arm. The air dimmed. The whispers all around me stopped. For the first time since entering the temple, there was complete, absolute silence. And then, from deep within that stillness, came a new sound, a breath. Not mine. Slow, deliberate, drawn from the stone itself. "You found the unremembered," said a voice, calm, but with a depth that made my bones vibrate. The marble beneath my hand trembled faintly. The letters on the wall shifted, as if rearranging themselves. I watched wide-eyed as the faded name began to repair, faint golden dust seeping into the cracks, redrawing what had been lost. I whispered, almost afraid to disturb it. Who are they?" The voice answered from everywhere at once. The ones who were forgotten. Names spoken once and then lost to silence. They wait to be heard again. The light spread across the wall, illuminating hundreds of faint carvings that had been invisible before. They flared softly, a constellation of memory returning to life. The air trembled with the first faint whispers of those long silent names. One of them, a man's voice trembling like dry leaves, spoke clearly near my ear. "You are the first voice we've heard in 1,000 years." My chest ached. I could feel their presence not as fear, but as longing. Each whisper carried gratitude, relief, a soft ache of being remembered, and then the great voice, the temple itself, spoke again. Every sound leaves an echo, but not every echo finds a listener. You are the listener now. I wanted to respond, but my throat felt tight. There was so much feeling in the air, grief, hope, release, that words seemed small. I simply nodded, knowing the temple would understand. The golden veins in the walls began to pulse again, stronger this time, sending waves of warm light through the hall. The mist shimmered like a living sea, and for a few heartbeats the whispers aligned, hundreds of voices speaking in harmony, like a choir made of memory. "Thank you," they said over and over, fading softly with each repetition. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful, whole. When the last whisper faded, the temple shifted again. A soft sound, like stone breathing, came from ahead. The end of the hall was changing. The wall ahead cracked gently, splitting open to reveal another passage, narrower, darker, pulsing faintly with faint crimson light instead of gold. The air smelled different there, metallic, heavy like rain before a storm. I turned back once, looking over the glowing names. They had dimmed now, resting again, but I could still feel them. Listening. I whispered softly, "I'll remember you." And the echo came back, thousands of voices speaking as one, fading into the distance. "We already do." With my lantern trembling in hand, I stepped into the red-lit corridor. into the deeper part of the temple where echoes turned into voices, and voices began to think. The corridor narrowed until my shoulders brushed cold marble on both sides. My lantern's flame fluttered as if the air itself was holding its breath. The golden mist from the hall behind me was gone now, replaced by a faint, pulsing red haze that moved like a heartbeat. Each step echoed longer than it should have. The sound came back twisted, slower, like the temple was chewing the sound before returning it. I slowed my breathing, listening carefully. It wasn't mere echo anymore, and it was reply. When my foot scuffed the stone, I heard a faint voice return. Step softly. I froze. My heart beat once, hard, in my chest. Then very quietly I whispered, "Who's there?" The reply was immediate. The same phrase, but slower, deeper, as if filtered through centuries of stone. "Who is there?" It wasn't mimicking me. It was understanding me. The corridor sloped downward now, winding like a serpent's spine. I followed carefully, brushing my hand along the wall for balance. The marble here felt different, not smooth, but warm, like skin under stone. Sometimes it quivered faintly beneath my fingertips, like something beneath was breathing. The sound of dripping water echoed ahead, slow and rhythmic. But the closer I came, the more it began to sound like words. Drip, stay, drip. Still, drip, listen. My lantern flickered violently and went out. The red glow from the walls grew stronger, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. I could see without seeing. The air shimmered faintly with particles of light drifting upward from unseen cracks in the floor. I whispered, "Temple, what are you?" For a long time there was only silence, then a vibration under my feet so deep it felt like it came from the bones of the earth. "I am the stone that remembers sound." The voice was massive, yet intimate. It wasn't in the air. It was inside the walls, the floor inside me. Every syllable came as a low hum through my bones. "Every whisper that touches my surface becomes a seed," the voice continued. "And in time, those seeds grow into echoes. You hear them as ghosts, but they are only memories that learned how to speak." I stood still, shivering, not in fear, but in awe. The red light flickered, showing glimpses of carvings along the wall. But these were not names. These were shapes, spirals, eyes, stars, waves. The language of sound itself etched into marble. Each one hummed faintly when I passed. I asked softly, "And you, remember all of them?" "I remember what is spoken in truth," it replied. "Not every voice deserves to remain." There was sorrow in that tone, not anger, but weariness. As if the temple had carried more than it could bear. Then from deeper within the darkness, I heard it, a second voice. Unlike the calm resonance of the temple, this one was human, fragile, whispering directly into my ear though no one stood near. "Don't go further." I turned sharply, lantern in hand, but the hall behind me was empty. Only red mist and breathing stone. The whisper came again, clearer now, trembling. "He listens to everything you say. He learns from you." The temple's deeper voice rose again, smooth, deliberate. "Do not fear the echo, fear silence, for silence forgets." Their tones collided, one deep and serene, one desperate and trembling, until they blended into an unsettling harmony. I whispered, "Who are you both?" The temple answered first, "I am the keeper of what once was." Then, softly, almost as if hiding beneath that greater sound, came the reply of the human whisper, "And I am what he cannot forget." A faint shape began forming ahead, a circle of stone sunken into the floor, surrounded by glowing red veins. It pulsed like a living heart. I approached cautiously, feeling every vibration through my steps. The air was dense now, warm, thick with the hum of unseen energy. "Step into the echo," said the deep voice. "Don't," said the faint one. I stood between them, every nerve alive, caught between the urge to trust the vast calm and the plea of fear. When I finally spoke, my voice came out as a whisper barely audible. "Why me?" The temple's voice rumbled low and deep. "Because you still listen." I took a slow step forward into the circle. The floor was warm, unnaturally warm, and the moment my foot touched its center, the entire corridor fell silent. The red glow dimmed. The whispers vanished. Then a vibration, a single low tone rose beneath me, like the deep note of a great horn played inside the earth. Images flickered in the air, faint, ghostly like memories projected through dust. A great crowd kneeling before an altar, priests in white robes, a golden bowl filled with water, and above them all, a voiceless light, pure, immense, sentient. The light turned slowly, like it was noticing me. My breath hitched. I could feel it touch my mind, and not words, but thoughts pressed directly into awareness. Do you seek to remember or to be remembered? I couldn't answer. My tongue felt heavy, my mind blank, the image dissolved. The corridor brightened again with a softer red glow. The human whisper returned, trembling, fading into static. He asked me the same thing. I said, to remember. That's why I'm still here. And then silence. Only my breathing, slow and uneven. The stone beneath my feet cooled again. The hum softened into nothing. I stood there for a long time until the temple's vast voice returned, quiet now, like a distant sea. Every echo is a choice. Speak carefully. Then, as the red light began to fade into gentle gold again, I felt the pull of another passage forming in the wall. Thin, vertical, opening like a wound of light. A soft wind moved through it, carrying faint scents of rain and wild thyme, air from the outside, or perhaps from a memory of it. I lifted my lantern, though it no longer seemed to matter, and whispered to the dark, I'm listening. And somewhere beneath my words, the stone whispered back so faintly I could barely hear, then remember me gently. The passage opened like a sigh. Warm air drifted out, faintly scented with cedar and old incense. The red glow had faded entirely now, replaced by pale silver light that seemed to come from the air itself. The mist no longer rolled. It floated still and delicate, like time had slowed to a hush. I stepped through. At first I thought it was another hall, but then I noticed the floor, not stone but shallow water, only an inch deep, perfectly still, reflecting everything above. Each ripple I made shimmered outward like the stroke of a brush across glass. My reflection followed me, but something about it felt wrong. The water distorted it in subtle ways. When I tilted my head, the reflection moved slower, as if thinking before following. The ceiling above arched impossibly high, lost in darkness. The only sound was my own breath, soft, echoing faintly. Then, slowly, I realized the echo wasn't syncing with me. I breathed in, the echo breathed out. I stopped breathing altogether, but the echo kept going. The sound of inhalation, slow and deep, filled the chamber, though I hadn't moved. The ripples on the water trembled with it, as though something beneath the surface was exhaling. I whispered, "Who are you?" My voice drifted away, soft as silk. The reply came from everywhere, from under the water, from within my chest, in the same tone but reversed. "Who are you?" The sound vibrated gently in the air, not threatening but intimate, like something old trying to remember how to speak through me. I knelt, touching the water. It was warm, beneath it smooth stone. When I leaned closer, my reflection's eyes blinked, a moment after mine, and then, quietly, it spoke. "You are not alone here." I felt my pulse slow, not from fear, from something else. A deep stillness, the kind that comes when you stop fighting what you don't understand. The reflection smiled faintly, though my own lips had not moved. "Do you know why you came?" it asked. I whispered, "To listen." The reflection's eyes softened, ancient, tired, kind. "Then listen to this." The chamber darkened, slowly. The mist began to move again, swirling upward from the water like breath made visible. Each wisp shimmered faintly with symbols, Greek letters, fragments of prayers, the language of wind. And then I heard it. The slow rhythm of breathing. Hundreds of layers, rising and falling together. Not human, not divine, but collective. The breath of the temple itself. Every inhale brought warmth. Every exhale made the air tremble. My body began to sway unconsciously to its rhythm. The voice, my voice yet not mine, spoke again through the reflection. "You breathe what they once breathed. You carry them in every breath." Images began to surface in the water. Faces blurred, dissolving as soon as they formed. Men, women, children, each taking a breath, releasing it and fading into the next. Their breath became air. The air became sound. Sound became memory. And I became the keeper of all of it. The echo rose, softer now, not a single voice but many whispering together through my reflection. You call it haunting. We call it returning. The air grew heavy. My reflection reached upward, and the water's surface didn't resist. The arm passed through, rising from the mirror world like a ghost of light. The hand hovered inches from my chest. Breathe with me, it said. I didn't move. I couldn't. But when I finally took a slow, deliberate breath, the reflection exhaled perfectly in sync. For the first time, we matched. And in that moment, something strange happened. The chamber brightened, faintly gold this time, and my body felt lighter, almost weightless. The walls expanded outward with the rhythm of our breathing. Every surface pulsed gently, alive. Then came a new sound, faint but distinct, the whisper of words forming between each breath. When you breathe in, you take. When you breathe out, you give. All that lives between the two is remembered here. The reflection's eyes glowed faintly. I saw stars swirling in them, constellations that didn't belong to the world above. The mist curled closer around me, warm and humming softly. It didn't feel like fog anymore. It felt like presence, thousands of quiet souls resting in the rhythm of air. I realized then what this place truly was, not a temple of worship, but of remembrance. A place where even breath was sacred, because it carried the echo of everything that had ever lived. The reflection's face grew still. Every breath leaves a trace, it said. Yours has been heard, and with that, the reflection smiled one last time and dissolved into the ripples. The chamber's breathing slowed, faded, and finally stilled. The silence that followed was not empty. It was vast, filled with all that had ever been spoken, waiting quietly. Then from somewhere far away, a new sound and soft footsteps, mine, only I hadn't moved. They came closer, echoing gently, until a faint silhouette appeared through the mist, shaped like me, but made entirely of light and whisper. It stopped a few feet away. The temple remembers you now, it said. Go where breath ends and voice begins. A new doorway shimmered open behind it, glowing pale blue, lined with flowing script that looked like sound waves turned to light. The figure turned and stepped through, fading as it did. I followed slowly, my reflection gone, my lantern unneeded, my breath quieter than ever. As I passed through the doorway, the sound of the chamber's last whisper lingered behind me, fading like the echo of a lullaby. All who listen become part of the sound. The doorway ahead was nothing but black. Not shadow, not absence of light, but something deeper. The kind of darkness that swallows sound before it's born. When I stepped through, even my heartbeat faded. The sound of my footsteps gone. My breath gone. It was as though the air itself refused to carry vibration. For the first time since entering the temple, there was nothing to listen to, only silence. At first, it was peaceful. I felt my body relax, freed from echoes, from whispers, from weight. My senses softened, my thoughts slowed. But soon I realized, true silence isn't empty. It pushes back. I felt it pressing gently against my skin, my eyelids, the insides of my ears. The more I tried to listen, the heavier it grew, like invisible hands resting on me, waiting. I whispered, or thought I did. Hello? No sound, Not even the faint vibration in my throat. The silence absorbed it. I tried again, louder. Is anyone here? Nothing. But this time I felt a faint vibration beneath my feet. Not a sound, but a pulse. Like the world had exhaled under the floor. Then came a strange awareness. I wasn't standing on stone anymore. The floor was soft. Not like fabric, like breathing. Each step sank slightly, rose again. The ground itself was alive. I reached for my lantern out of habit, though I knew there was no point. Its flame wouldn't light. The air didn't allow fire, didn't allow sound. It allowed only presence. I moved carefully through the blackness, hands outstretched, feeling invisible walls curve around me like ribs. And then, a whisper of thought, not sound, brushed my mind. You are inside silence now. I froze. The words hadn't entered my ears. They were inside me. You chased every echo. The thought continued. Now you have found what they come from. I swallowed hard, though I couldn't hear even that. My chest rose and fell in complete stillness. The voice, or thought, pulsed through me again. Everything that is spoken needs me to exist. I am the space between. The ground shifted slightly underfoot, expanding outward with each silent word. I could sense its size, infinite. An ocean of stillness. Images began forming in the dark, not visible but felt. The golden hall, the breathing chamber, the mirror of voices, each fading like ripples into this single point. Every whisper returns to me, the silence said. Every sound ends where I begin. I thought, maybe spoke without sound. Then why am I here? Because you listened too well. For a moment, the pressure around me loosened. I could move more easily, breathe a little deeper. Then came something stranger. From deep within the black, I felt a shape approaching. Slow, deliberate, formless, yet vast. It didn't walk. It simply arrived, folding space around itself. And when it was close enough, I felt warmth, faint but steady, like the memory of sunlight. You feared me once, it said. You called me emptiness. But I am only rest. I wanted to answer, but there was still no sound. Only thought and pulse merging into one rhythm. The warmth deepened. Shapes began to take form. Outlines of hands, faces, not human exactly, but sculpted from the absence of light. They surrounded me, countless, silent, unmoving. They weren't threatening. They were waiting. We are what remains when the echo fades, they said together, though not aloud. We are the listeners who stopped speaking. Their words vibrated inside my bones, a hum without noise. The silence began to thicken again, heavy and soft. It filled my lungs, my mind, until even my thoughts felt muffled. I could feel myself dissolving into it, the boundary between body and air fading. It wasn't frightening. It was calm, complete. Do you see now? Said the silence. All things return here. Even you. I tried to think, I'm not ready, but the thought didn't move. It stayed inside me, folded in the stillness. Then from somewhere impossibly far away, another whisper surfaced, faint, trembling, like a forgotten echo. Don't sleep yet. It was familiar. The woman's voice, the one from the mirror. Her tone was softer now, pleading. If you rest here, you'll never wake. Silence keeps what it loves. A faint shimmer appeared in the distance, a thin line of gold slicing through the dark. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat calling me back. I took a step toward it. The silence resisted, gently like hands holding me back. You could stay, it murmured. There is no pain here. No sound, no memory, only peace. For a moment I almost believed it, but then the woman's whisper came again, firmer now. Remember why you came. You came to listen, not to disappear. Her words struck through the quiet like ripples in water. For the first time I heard something, though faint, distant, the sound of my own heartbeat returning. The silence shivered. I took another step. The ground pulsed beneath me, protesting softly, but released its hold. The golden slit of light widened. Glowing with warmth, I whispered, and this time I heard it. Barely audible. Thank you, the silence replied. So faintly it could have been a thought. You will hear me again, when everything else is gone. The golden light engulfed me, and suddenly there was sound again, the rush of air, the whisper of mist. the beating of my heart. The temple had not vanished, and it had simply shifted around me, returning me to its living corridors. Behind me, the doorway of darkness sealed with one last sigh, the quietest, deepest sound I had ever heard.